Hello to everyone. I know that there's been quite a lot of delay for the whole of today's session, so I hope to keep within my 20 minutes that have been allocated for me to share with you. So before I start, I'd like to say thank you for coming for this stream of the session that is on self-identification as well as learning about children's self-esteem. So I'm the first speaker of the four, and that four of us will all be talking about the research we have done in the journal publication. So my presentation will pitch at a level that hopefully is more for educational therapists as well as parents, and something a little bit more animated, something a bit more different. And over the next 20 minutes, I hope to give you a quick summary of the study that we have done to better understand the social emotional needs of the children with learning difficulties through their self-evaluation. So this is the journal publication we have done in the 2016 January publication, and that this was being conducted by Dr. Adam Wee, myself, as well as Ms. Laura Lim, while we were at Desk Academy, as well as National Council for Social Services, respectively. I also noticed some of you are taking pictures. Just let you know is that all these slides will be available for us for download on the website in the future. Okay. So, however, although it's led by us, we cannot do it without the support and help from our counterparts at Care Corners, Students Care Service, as well as MCYC Community Services. So you may see this as a key sharing that we have, but besides being a key sharing, it's actually really a journey for me. It has been a 2-year journey since 2014 where we have a chance to be involved. So you'll start with why we started out with doing this research. There will also be looking at the actual research outline itself, the post-research focus group. So we have members from the 4 VWOs to look into the findings that we have, and finally the what next from this particular research. So with us today, we also have 2 of our counterparts from NCSS, Nadira and Guo Hao, who is joining us here. So it'll be interesting to be able to share our findings over the next few minutes with all of you. So this actually is as an image that we put up in terms of what happened during that initial meeting. So in 2014, for our first meeting, NCSS gathered representatives from the 4 different VWOs. In this case, will be DAS, Care Corner, Students Care Service, and MCYC Community Services, to explore how we can support the social emotional needs of our students with learning difficulties. And for henceforth, I will address this as LD, in relation to the social emotional needs, which is currently not widely covered in Singapore. Through the discussion, we decided to conduct a research. And this research is to find out whether children with LD, do they have poorer social emotional ratings compared to the normal achieving students. And this is used through 3 different kind of questionnaires that we have. So NCSS and Desk Academy, we led the research, whereas the 4 different VWOs helped us to conduct the questionnaire with their clients. A quick one about the profile of the students that we have. So a total of 288 students were involved at the initial stage. And eventually we used the data from 254 of them. And these children are aged between 11 to 17 years old. They comprise of children with LD, more specifically dyslexia, ADHD, SLI, as well as a control group of students who are from a mainstream school on normal achieving ability. So this is like a typical classroom environment that we have in our specialized remediation program. Usually is 1 educational therapist to about 4 students. So as you can see, sometimes the students may not be always fully engaged in the classroom. They may be doing some other stuff, but I'm sure the teachers would have noticed that the student is actually using a handphone. But the teachers are always trying their best to be working with the students, but it may not be an appropriate environment for them to working on. Maybe some other things need to be supported for them. And when it comes to the questionnaire, all the questionnaires are conducted outside lesson time, and it's being done by our colleagues from the 4 different VWOs as well as the interns at NCSS. Okay, looking into the whole process of our research. So this is the very first questionnaire that we have. Again, it's very, very small print. Do not have to worry. I'm going to show you a sample example very soon. If not, those at the last row you cannot see, definitely. So this is the Strengths and Difficulties questionnaire. And this Strengths and Difficulties questionnaire have about 25 items. And that, let me just show it to you here. So it is on a 3-point scale. This 3-point scale starts from not true, somewhat true, and certainly true, over 5 different categories. The 5 different categories will be the emotional symptoms, the conduct problem, and do take note of the conduct problem. We're going to talk a bit more about that. The hyperactivity, inattention, peer relations, as well as the pro-social behavior. Okay, this is, as promised, this is a sample question we have. Have a look at this question and think about answering this question yourself too. So let's look at the first question on the conduct problem scale. I get very angry and lose my temper. So the students have 3 options. Not true, somewhat true, and certainly true. Think about this question for yourself. How many of you think that this is not true for you? Maybe just a slight raise of hand. Okay, I think I see a couple of hands, a few hands. What about it being somewhat true? Somewhere in the middle? Okay. Usually we have a lot of people somewhere in the middle all the time. What about certainly true? Certainly true that I get very angry and lose my temper. It's okay. Sometimes I do get angry and lose my temper too. So this is a questionnaire that's being done. So students have this statement and need to decide which of the 3 do they choose from. So that is the first questionnaire we have. Let's look at the second questionnaire. This second questionnaire is the self-efficacy questionnaire for children. And for this questionnaire itself, having a look at it, in this case, there are 24 items, and these 24 items are put into 3 different categories, and 3 different categories are the social, academic, and the emotional level at a 5-point scale. 5-point scale from 1, which is not at all, 3, which is somewhere in the middle, and 5, which is very well. So sample questions again, have a look at it. Let's look at the last question on the emotional self-efficacy domain. How well do you succeed in cheering yourself up when an unpleasant event has happened? So similarly for yourself, think about it. Is it 1, not at all, 3, somewhere in the middle, or 5, very well? Just a raise of hand. What about for those who have somewhere nearer to 1? What about very well? Do you feel you're a person with very good. I see a couple of hands. I know Singaporeans are always very shy when it comes to doing this participation. So this is what the students need to do. But of course, sometimes the students are facilitated by the interns from NCSS. So in case they have problem comprehending the question, the interns will read the question out to them. Yeah, because after all, the students with LD, they may not fully comprehend the sentence structure itself, and they'll be explained to them. But of course, with as much this research integrity as possible. So let's go to the third question. The third questionnaire, which is quite a mouthful, is the SPPLD questionnaire, Self-Perception Profile for Learning Disabled Students. So this questionnaire, in fact, it is not as clear-cut as the earlier 2 questionnaire. It has a 2-part question. So for this 2-part question itself, similarly, there are 40, in this case, this has 48 items, and these 48 items are over 10 different categories. The 10 different categories include the intellectual ability, reading, spelling, writing, math, social, athletic, physical appearance, behavioral, and self-worth. It is those in the first half that is more interesting that we found some findings for you. Again, we have a sample question. Okay, let's look at the first sample question. Under behavioral, some kids usually get into trouble because of the things they do. But other kids usually don't do things that get them into trouble. So the kids have to decide which of these 2 statements is more true for them. So let's assume they feel that the first part of the statement, some kids usually get into trouble because of the things they do. Now the question is that, is it really true for me, or is it sort of true for me? So once they've decided, they'll make a tick to it. So of course, the person facilitator need to look into all the questionnaire that's been done for the students. So I have shown you in terms of the 3 different questionnaires being done. But the more important thing for the audience here, especially for the educators around, is how do I interpret this information, isn't it? Okay, this being a research conference, we definitely do have some charts, some data to show it to you. So there are 10 different categories that I mentioned for the earlier research, earlier questionnaire. And if you notice, there are only 3 of the categories that had a red color star. So the 3 categories are the GIA. GIA in this case is the general intelligence ability, the reading, and the spelling. So for these three different categories, the black color column are the students with LD. The gray color column are the students who are normal achieving students. So there must be statistically significant results in order for us to identify that these three categories is something for us to report, whereas the other 7 categories did not give us the results that we have. So again, how do we interpret this? It means that the students with LD rate themselves with a higher level of perception of their general intelligence, reading and spelling compared to the control group of students. So again, how do we put it into interpretation? So these students with LD, they receive support in the specialized remediation program. So in a specialized remediation program, it's an emotionally sound learning environment. Things are structured, systematic, and explicitly taught. So this may have given the students a bit more ability in terms of self-control and manage their learning. This gives them a perception of higher intelligence. And the next point is about their reading and spelling, which you noticed earlier that the score is actually a lot higher. After all, when it comes to our specialized remediation program, students focus very much in terms of developing the child's reading and spelling ability. So these are the 2 areas that the students have a better perception of their ability compared to the normal achieving students. But for the second questionnaire, which you saw earlier, which is called the self-efficacy questionnaire for children, it did not produce this a statistically significant result for us. So there's no findings from that particular research, that particular questionnaire. But the first questionnaire we showed earlier, which is the strengths and difficulty questionnaire, that is the one that gave us a very meaningful result that I would like to show to you now. So this is the findings that we've gotten from the strengths and difficulties questionnaire. There were 5 different categories. Earlier I mentioned to you, take note of the conduct behavior. So the third category, which is the conduct behavior, you've noticed that the black color column is higher than the gray. So how do we interpret this particular result? This would mean that students with LD perceive that they have more conduct problems compared to normal achieving students. So what does that mean again? Okay, of course, this you may see it as an exaggeration of what happened in a typical classroom environment, especially for when it comes to those 1:4 specialized remediation program. But for the educational therapists amongst us in the room, do you think is this a real exaggeration, or is it sometimes a reality on some of the bad days that we have? I see some nodding of heads. I think this is something very true. We don't deny ourselves that, the classes are always smooth sailing. No, sometimes we do not deliver our full lesson plan for it. So the students, many times, it could be that they observed other students having difficult behavior, and they also have self-awareness to recognize that they also have the difficult behavior, and that's why they have a higher rating in terms of conduct problems compared to others. So we have covered things that they can find in the journal, that I've mentioned in the January edition of the publication. What I'm going to share with you right now are things that is beyond the journal itself. We follow up things with a focus group. So this was a focus group that was done in June 2015 last year. So in this focus group itself, we have the members from the 4 different VWOs to provide views of how they feel about the research that's been done and the findings that's been conducted. It's very heartwarming for our educational therapists to see results that it is that children with LD perceive themselves with superior intellectual ability, reading and spelling skills. And this can be associated with their specialized remediation program. So again, that really edifies in terms of what our education therapists are doing. The emotionally sound learning environment really built up our students in terms of their own self-efficacy as their emotional ability too. But what about the second finding? The second finding that we have, which is that children with LD rated themselves with more conduct problems. This demonstrates a gap probably in the supporting of the services for our students, and this needs to be addressed. I think for the education therapists amongst us again, whom we need to provide support for our students in terms of academic development, and we also need to look into the child's behavioral issues. It's really a 2-pronged thing that needs to be worked on. Hopefully, a specialized things can be delivered for our students. So during the focus group, we have some quotes from our focus group participants that I would like to share with you right now. And these are some of them, they are words of it. So one of the participants said this: some students feel that they are given a reason to misbehave. And the students say things like, I held in for 6 hours when I go to school. And the people here, they really understand me. So, because they understand me, I behave poorly. And that, of course, means that the educational therapists, they really need to manage when the students behave poorly in the classroom environment. Another educational therapist, or should I say a focus group member, mentioned this too. The students know that the class schedule is very tight. So they know that the class schedule is tight. It means that when they misbehave, they will be able to skip certain components of the lesson. I think my colleagues at DS will also recognize that because everything needs to be delivered maybe in 1 hour. So if the child misbehaves, you may not be able to deliver certain portions of the lesson. This is something else shared by one of our participants in the focus group too. That she feels that the behavioral management is not well covered in terms of training. And she perceived that maybe 90% of the teachers or maybe those who are involved in therapy are not trained sufficiently in terms of providing support for the children's behavioral issues. Okay, this is a comment that was made by one of them too, and this in terms of what a mainstream teacher commented. So the mainstream teacher told one of the students that, why can't you get the right answer anyway? Why can't you ever get the right answer? This is what one of the mainstream teachers said to the student. So the student feel that since my teachers do not feel that I can get the right answer, why put in the effort to try at all? And the final one, this is also by one of our participants at the focus group. In terms of what next, we've talked so much about the support we need to provide for our learners. And that her opinion is that metacognition, which is the process of thinking about thinking, it may be an area that needs to be developed so that the students will know that whatever task they do, they need to think about it, reframe it, and to have a structure for them to adhere to it. So when it comes to the questions that has been posed at the focus group itself, we have highlighted about the views that has been found in the study. What are the common conduct problems that the children actually displayed? When it comes to the importance in addressing it, because when you do not address these conduct behavioral issues, it's going to impact in terms of how the students proceed on in terms of their academic learning. These two stakeholders are very important. I think it's very important for the different organizations to be working with the parents as well as the mainstream school teachers. And finally, when it comes to behavioral intervention strategies itself, so what kind of strategies may be suitable to help this group of students with LD? Are we looking at a kind of program that is mediated, a kind of program that has multi-sensory modality to develop the child's executive functioning skills? And these social interaction skills are an area that is also very much lacking when it comes to the population of students that we have. Our students in this generation may have more difficulties in identifying their emotions. They also have a certain level of lack of empathy. There is this term being used to describe the children of this generation, which is the strawberry generation. But why are they called the strawberry generation? Because if you think about strawberry, when you squeeze a strawberry, what's going to happen to the strawberry? It brews very, very easily. It's just like our new generation right now. So when you see a conclusion slide, it's always something very interesting because it means that we're coming to the end of my session. Okay, and that for this two main areas, what are two main findings that we have? The two main areas in terms of the way forward is really the findings. We carry on supporting our specialized remediation program for our students because they perceive themselves as having higher intellectual ability. They also perceive themselves as greater spelling and reading skills. And NCSS also recognized that there's a need for a dedicated program that looks into this behavioral management and to pilot this program in the future. But this is something we're still working on it. And this journey itself that I shared with you earlier is very nice that from a person who started at the initial stage, and I could see that this research has moved on from a research all the way to an actual delivery of program. I think that is what a researcher always wants to look at. So finally, I'm just going to show a quick animation, hopefully can wrap up in the next 2 minutes of what I've mentioned earlier. And I also hope that the technology will work well for me and that the audio will come along. Okay, this sounds good. Maybe louder music a little bit. So we've mentioned quite a bit about LD. LD is learning difficulties. So this research is to investigate whether children with LD, do they have poorer social emotional ratings compared to the normal achieving students. And this group of students with LD, they may have dyslexia, they may have also ADHD and math difficulties too, and make learning even more difficult for them. So this group of students, again, they are involved in a specialized remediation program in an emotionally sound learning environment. So we did a research using questionnaires to compare the findings between them and the control group, and we have two specific findings that I'll share very quickly now. The first finding is that the children with LD perceive themselves with higher academic ability along with better reading and spelling skills. And what does this mean? This may indicate that the existing specialized remediation program is doing a good job in terms of allowing the students to have a more positive perception of themselves, and they enjoy learning much more compared to maybe students in mainstream and control group. They may also be more engaged in the classroom environment because the more positive self-concept and more attention from the teachers also. Another finding that we have is that children with LD perceive themselves with more conduct problems, and there may be a need for a specialized behavioral remediation program in the future to address this conduct problem, to turn them from potential bad apples into good ones. So these children with LD, they may take a longer path to go to the place they're heading for, but they can get there if they have the right kind of support so that they can meet their fullest potential. You have seen that there's this origami on every other slide. The reason why I have this origami is that we really believe that these children can be molded positively with the support from social services, with a professional help for it. And I hope that you find this short little animated summary a good roundup of the research. And finally, as you can see, there are different origamis that I put up there. Origamis can be all different and unique. And we have to recognize that not all origamis have to be a crane. So we can accept that our students can be different and accept them from their own form of origami. With this, I thank you.